live struggle legacy. It's a whole movement.
I got you, big baby. I keep the struggle live struggle, live music. Pay attention to how we do it. And so my dog who never made it out. Live struggle, I got you, homie. We break it out, live struggle, live music. Pay attention to how we do it. And so my dog who never made it out. Live struggle, I got you, homie. The things we do when we down on our luck, like a dolphin, anything to get fucked up. What you think? Now we out here trying to get locked up. Desperation brings desperate measures trying to come up.
Hey everybody, it's your boy MP, Live Struggle Legacy, and welcome to the Live Struggle Legacy podcast. Now, real quick, if you haven't already done so, please make sure you hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, hit that notification bell, drop a comment. If you have a question for our guest today, start a conversation, drop it in the comment section. If you're listening on a streaming platform, please make sure you hit the follow button, download, save, rate us. And if you're looking to promote your business, holler at me because we're looking for sponsors. Okay, so I have a very special guest in the house tonight. So this gentleman right here, he's worn a lot of different hats. He's been an artist. He's been in several bands. He's a musician. He's done A&R, artist management, and he is a music industry attorney by trade. None other than Randy Ojeda.
Hey, thanks, MP. Thanks for the intro. You said Mr. Rogers, and I wasn't expecting it to be so Mr. Rogers. You know, that was great. You know, I would be your neighbor. You know.
Yes, sir. Yeah. I appreciate that so much, neighbor. Yeah. I appreciate that, and in a way, we kind of are neighbors. Like I grew up in St. Pete. Yeah. You grew up in Tampa. That's We're right across the water.
That's right.
Absolutely.
And yeah, I spent a lot of time, you know, at State Theater and places like that in St. Pete, you know, so we probably were in the same room a lot and just never realized it, you know.
Oh, brother, I grew up at the State Theater.
Yeah.
Like the State Theater probably in a way kind of saved my life. And that was my big introduction to music. You know, oh yeah, my mom worked there. My sister worked there. Dave Hunley was like an uncle to me.
Oh, man.
Oh, yeah.
That's
bro.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So shout out Dave and Tony.
Yeah, man. I spent a lot of my life at the State Theater. I feel like every weekend, every Friday, every Saturday, whatever show was going on, I was there, you know. So yeah, we definitely have been in the same room a lot.
For sure,
just never knew it.
Yeah, I love that though. It's such a small world, neighbor.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
So let's dive right in. So I always like to tell a little story to the audience about like how I know you.
Yeah.
So this is my first time meeting Randy in person, but I have been following him on socials for quite a while now. And initially, I thought that Randy was like a producer. I have a lot of artist producer friends, but it was only until recently that I started seeing Randy share. And I always appreciated his content because he would always drop insightful music industry stuff. That's why I just assumed that you know he was an artist or a producer. And then he would always kind of be dropping some jewels on the industry. And I thought, okay, this dude's just been around. He's pretty seasoned. But it wasn't until recently I started to see you drop some kind of you know legal advice and whatnot that I discovered that you are actually a music attorney.
That's it. Yeah.
Which is super dope. So I'm really excited to get this perspective on the show. But it was when you actually dropped a post, I believe, that said that you were interested in talking about the industry and what artists need to do in order to protect themselves in this industry. That kind of triggered me to reach out and say, hey, man, I would love to have you on the show to talk about.
Yeah, no, I mean, the power of social media, right? You know, like I threw that out there, and I've had a bunch of people reach out to me and say like, hey, would love to get your perspective, would love to have you on the podcast, including yourself. So, you know, I'm just grateful for it. Like I can talk about this stuff all day, you know, and I already bother my wife too much with it. So it's like, you know, I'd rather talk to you about it, you know.
But then, well, man, I'm super grateful because I know you could have been anywhere tonight. You probably could have been at other podcasts, but you made the choice to come to share your story on the Live Struggle Legacy podcast.
Absolutely. So and shout out to Benton Media Lounge, because this is very close to my house. So anytime somebody invites me to Benton, I am there. You know, it's a quick drive. I'm just down the road. So, you know, shout out to Angel and everybody over here.
Amen, brother. Amen. I mean, we wouldn't be doing this if it wasn't for Angel and Benton Media Lounge. So, big shout out. And if you haven't been by the coffee shop,
Yes.
you gotta come check it out.
Yeah, no, I'm already like I'm seeing this Benton breakfast sandwich on the menu, and that sounds real good.
Oh, they got juices.
Yeah,
they got
yeah.
snacks,
I'm gonna.
they got
Oh man, I gotta come by. You know.
Absolutely. So thank you for being here, man.
Yeah, absolutely.
I always ask every guest, what about this podcast in particular resonated and made you feel like comfortable coming on the show and sharing your story?
No, I mean, I think just the concept of the live struggle, right? Like not that I've been fortunate to I've struggled like everybody else has, but I've been fortunate to have a pretty good life, but I definitely had to work to get to where I am. It's not like going to law school, passing the bar exam, all the late nights and the studying and everything. Like, it wasn't an easy road to get to where I am. So, I feel like in that sense, I relate to the idea of a live struggle. It's like everybody, you don't realize like, everybody's got their thing that they're working on. And it's, sometimes it's not even something that other people can see. It's internal stuff that you're working on yourself. And that, to get to where I am, I had to do a lot of that, as well as the external stuff, as well as the bar exam and all this stuff. I had to work on myself and really get that mindset right. It's like I run my own business, so it's like it's hard to go out there on your own, especially in a market that's not traditionally known for this type of work, and a area of law that very few people practice in, So I'm really. I went out there, I'm out there with my canoe and I'm going, I'm doing what I can. And, it's been rewarding, but it's definitely been a struggle. And, I've seen other people come on this podcast and talk about their stories and their lives. And it just all resonated with me. So,
well, man, I appreciate that a lot. And one thing I just want to touch on, because I did have a friend once say, like, why would you build a whole brand around struggle? But if you know the backstory, and I don't expect you to know every detail of live struggle, but live struggle actually started in prison, right? Wow. So this silhouette on my shirt, this was Timothy Big Baby Lewis. Okay. So he was a close friend of mine. I met him in prison. We were at 7 different institutions together, and we had that camaraderie. This was federal, so we started at Orient Road in Tampa, and then ended up in Hernando, Citrus, Ocilla, Georgia, and then when we were finally designated, because those were just like holdovers, right, we ended up in South Carolina together. We were there for a couple years together, and then I ended up getting shipped, and eventually, as soon as I got shipped, I'm way out in Mississippi. I didn't think I was going to know anybody, and I really want to share this. I don't share this on every pod. It's definitely been shared, but I want to share it with you because you started as a musician, right? Mm. So you are passionate about music. Well, so was Tim. He had a label out of Clearwater called Swamp House Records, right? And so we had a lot in common, and one thing about being in these institutions, I don't want to talk too much about the institutions. I don't want to make this all about prison and whatnot, but I do want to share that we had a band room that we could use, right?
Oh, that's cool.
And it was really hard to get into that. People would be on the band the wait list for years. People are doing double-digit sentences in here, right? Well, in South Carolina, it was almost impossible to get into, and the dudes that had access to it, we didn't really vibe with them like that, but when I walked onto this yard in Yazoo City, Mississippi, was just a super crazy yard, right? Federal prison. The first thing I'm thinking of all these things. What am I going to have to do? Am I going to have to, do something to, without going into detail? As you can imagine, right? It's prison, right? And it's a new spot, and it's further out west, more politics. So all these things that are going through my mind of anxieties of what I may be facing. Well, when you go to the chow hall, that's when you see where your people are, so to speak, right? Mm-hmm. Whatever that may mean a lot of different things. Right. The only way I can relate to it is to, you think about high school. When you go into the cafeteria, it's like a very extreme version of that. So, you're like the goths over here, the nerds over there, you got preppy kids over there, everybody's kind of in their group, but it's like on some real shit, like gangs, races, this, that, right? So anyway, long story short, I see this dude from Largo come around the corner and I recognized him right away, the homie man. Shout out to the homie man. And he was real good friends with Tim, Big Baby. And the first thing he said is, hey man, Tim's here, Big Baby's here, he's looking for you, right? And as soon as he said that, I see him come around the corner, big dude, long dreads, mouthful of gold, and he just lit up like a light bulb when he saw me. And Randy, man, I'll never forget what he said. He said, Mike, I got a band room and I need you.
Wow.
Right? And so from that moment, we were in there every Friday. And then another one of my homies, Infinite, shout out to Infinite, he had a band one every Monday, and we would kind of collab. But every time we would do a show with Big Baby, he would get somebody, he would commission a graphic designer, so to speak, who would do a handwritten flyer, paid in stamps.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah. Wow.
And on the bill, it would always say live struggle. Right. Well, sadly, Randy. So we did all these songs. We'd perform all these songs. We'd write all these songs. We had literally dozens of songs together between all of us. And so the plan was to come home and record these songs and make a label out of it. Live Struggle, right? Yeah. His label. Well, sadly, he passed away in prison due to medical negligence, and he did not make it home. So. Hence the Live Struggle legacy.
Oh, wow.
So the platform isn't built around struggle. The platform is built to honor the legacy of my friend Tim, but to expound on that, to inspire people to hold on to their dreams despite adversity.
Yeah.
So what we do in this show is we celebrate people and their passions. We tell stories that transform pain into purpose and adversity into legacy. And it doesn't mean that you had to have some horrible life and had all these awful things to happen. It just means that you went through some obstacles along the way, and you pushed past those obstacles, right? And in doing so, you're proving to the world, to this audience, that, if you want to be a music industry attorney, no matter what setbacks you have, you could be a music industry attorney.
Sure.
And you're proof of that, brother.
Yeah.
Right?
No, I appreciate that. And I'm with it. Like, I think, anybody can do whatever it is that they want to do, despite the struggle. I mean, it's hard for everybody. And that's what I was saying is, like, sometimes you don't know that people are struggling, but they are, I mean, everybody, life's not easy.
So that being said, enough about me and the platform.
That's
I talk about it all the time. I appreciate that a lot.
It really is.
But man, let's talk about Randy Ojeda, man. Tell us your life struggle. It doesn't have to be some glorified war story. I mean, tell us your life, man. I mean, I know a little bit about you, but tell the audience. We love stories. We love getting to know people.
Man, so born and raised in Tampa, Florida, right here. Not far from where this studio is. Born and raised here in Tampa. I started, I was always into music my whole life. Like, ever since, my dad gave me a little crate of records, your Led Zeppelins and AC/DCs and Van Halen, that kind of stuff, So he gave me this crate of records, and I just got really, really into music at a young age. And eventually, started picking up instruments like you do, started playing in bands, with my friends, little punk rock bands and stuff. And making a lot of noise in the garage, you know what I mean? So we did that for a long time. And then, even into high school and college, like, I was still playing in bands and touring and, doing the thing. We were like one of my bands was very popular on MySpace for a minute. So this is really dating me. But, like, we did well on MySpace and did through MySpace, booked a Hot Topic tour. So this is like really how much, like, I'm dating myself, is like,
that's dope.
We played at, I want to say, like 14 Hot Topics, like, through in Florida and, like, into the Southeast stuff. And
so, like, in malls,
in the malls, we would bring our gear. We would they'd clear out a little bit of space for us. We'd play, and did that in tons of malls. And it was like a Hot Topic sponsored thing. Like, they were like, it was like, like the Hot Topics next sound or something like that, it was like, so, anyways, we did that and, did some other touring and stuff, played a lot of shows. And then, college, graduated from USF from college, and I went to law school, and I kind of thought that was it for me for as far as music goes. I was like, well, I'm just gonna, I was gonna go down the more traditional path, do corporate law or, something like that. And, you know what they say, every time, just when you think you're out, they pull you right back in. So I while I was in law school in my first year, I met a rapper named IDK. Back then he was JIDK. But he, we met on Twitter, and, shout out to Twitter. And he, he said that he needed help with, a lot of like admin stuff, management, marketing. And I hadn't really done any artist management, but, I had this history in the industry, and then I also like had the skill set, being a future lawyer. Like I had, so I had the opportunity to start managing him, from there, started managing more artists, more producers, started managing bands, started my management company, Cigar City Management, shout out to that. I graduated law school and thought like, what, I'm not going to be a lawyer. I'm just going to stay in artist management. I'm going to keep doing this. Like things were going well. It was super active. I was busy. I was traveling a lot, so I did that for a long time, and eventually got the attention of Symphonic Distribution, another local, Tampa company. And they hired me to start doing business development and A&R for them. So I was signing clients, labels, getting more into the industry, started to see, the deals form and the deals develop. And that's when I started meeting a lot of attorneys in the industry. But also what I really saw was the lack of attorneys in the industry. I started seeing artists signing like serious contracts with a lot of legal implications without an attorney, because they didn't know who to call. They didn't have access to an attorney. They didn't have anybody that, could even explain to them what the contract means. People were just signing stuff, And so, I had it in the back of my mind for a while, while I was still working at Symphonic and doing management. I was like, man, like I feel like the artists from a legal perspective are just not being served. You know? So the pandemic happened, and that's when I saw my opportunity. I was like, all right, well, I used to be on the road, a couple weeks every month. I was traveling a lot, signing all these people, doing all this stuff. And then now it's the pandemic. I'm sitting at home, playing World of Warcraft. So like, what else am I going to do? Let me study for the bar, So after years of being out of the legal world, I took the bar exam here in Florida. And then basically started up my practice as soon as I could, as soon as I got the notice that I passed.
In 2020?
In 20, by that point, it's almost 2021.
Okay.
But yeah, end of 2020. Just because, the bar exam's only offered a couple times a year. So I had to, schedule it out and all that. But anyways, yeah, it was like right in the middle of the pandemic, I started my, my law firm, opened up shop, and then I've been doing it ever since. I've been representing artists and independent artists, musicians, producers, labels, and doing this thing full time. Like it's been my gig, and I don't really do much management anymore, but I'm very busy doing the law stuff, which is great. And it's rewarding for me because, like I said, I got into this because I saw that there was a void, there was a need for, obviously if you're Taylor Swift or you're Drake or whoever, like you got great lawyers, you got a whole legal team, but if you're that independent artist, you're signing your first deal, who do you go to? Who do you talk to? Like, where do you start? And a lot of people feel like lawyers in the industry especially are super inaccessible, and they can be, so I tried to, make a law firm that was accessible, that was open to people, and that people are, if they can't afford me, they can at least join our Discord, and ask questions and hang out and be part of the community and learn something just through the conversations that other people are having in our community. I try to provide as much educational content as I can. So like I said, if you can't afford me, you can't afford to hire me, or you're not in that position, at least you can gain some of that knowledge on your own and come in a little bit more empowered than you would have just totally blind. You know?
Yeah, man, I love that. So I just want to kind of fill in some blanks right here, and I want to dive into that because that's
that was a long story.
No, that's great. That's great, bro. Like, and congrats.
Thank you.
And much respect because I know that's not easy work.
Yeah.
You know, so but as you were, so you kind of already got into law, just understanding the music business through your artistry, your bands,
exactly,
and then eventually working through symphonic. But were you kind of flirting with the idea of becoming an attorney, or were you already set on being, an industry attorney?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely went through a lot of like ups and downs with this thinking, and there was definitely a time, like, I mean, I while I was in law school and I was doing the artist management stuff and that was building, I still went and worked for traditional law firms. Like the last thing I was working on before I went full time into management was like construction law, which is the most boring thing in the world. Like I'm just gonna tell you right now.
Oh,
like,
for sure. Codes and whatnot. Yeah.
Well, no, the last case that I worked on was the entire case basically hinged on how cement dried. I'm serious. So like it was hours and hours in the courtroom of expert testimony from structural engineers talking about cement drying. I swear to God, I fell asleep in the courtroom. Like that's how boring it was. And I knew, I was like, I can't do this for my whole life, So at the time, honestly, I didn't, I only knew like 2 music attorneys at the time, and I didn't think it was possible to break into that market. So I was just like, I'm just going to keep doing management, and just leave the law behind. And then, it took me a while of working in the industry and seeing the ins and outs, but eventually I realized like I can actually merge these things. I can be a lawyer and I can be in the music industry. So what am I waiting for?
Yeah, so you took your passion and you blended it with your career path.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Good for you, bro.
Yeah, and that's not an easy thing to do, and it's not something that everybody has the opportunity to do. So I'm very fortunate that I was able to do that.
Well, and it's a beautiful example, in the spirit of this show, that you took something that was just an idea that maybe a lot of people would have tried to talk you out of, and you stuck with it. You made it happen. And I mean, it's been a fulfilling career for you, right?
Yeah, no, it's been better than I could have even imagined. Like it's been so rewarding to work with so many artists, and like, my favorite thing, right, is seeing an artist or a producer get that first check. And even if it's small, $2,500 for a production fee or whatever, like, seeing somebody get a check for their music, like we were talking earlier before the pod about, how much money and time goes into just releasing one song, and then it's rare that you get a return on that, but to actually see, monetary profit from your work is like such a rewarding feeling. Like I've had people cry, because they're like, man, I've been doing this my whole life, and now somebody's giving me $50,000, somebody's giving me money for my music. How amazing is this? And it is amazing. And, that's super rewarding to me to see that first check. But then even more than that is seeing the second and the third and the fourth, and seeing more, seeing people build their own careers out of music is super rewarding as well. So
yeah, man, that's such a beautiful thing. And so, I want to pick your brain. I understand that this is your business, so I don't expect you to give too much. No. But I'm really interested to know, because I mean, I've known so many artists that don't have a clue. And I even told you this like off camera. I've read the Donald Passman books. I've read all these books on royalties and publishing and music industry law, and I still don't have a grasp on it. And I know I'm not alone in that boat. I even when I did time, I actually taught a music industry law class. Just
that's amazing.
I mean, I'm far from an expert, but I just used my book, and I would make handouts and pamphlets to try to, because a lot of people in there were artists, and try to kind of put them on that path. But even having done that, bro, I am so far from an expert. So with that being said, what advice do you have for anybody, whether they're producing, rapping, singing, or managing even? Any gems that you want to drop?
I mean, it sounds obvious, but you'd be amazed at how many people don't do this. But just get things in writing, like that's such an important part of this is even if it's just a simple split sheet when you're in the studio saying like, and if you don't know what a split sheet is, it's basically a document that says, I have this percentage of a song, you have that percentage, this is the day we wrote it, this is what the song is called, that just a very basic document. You definitely need to go a little bit further and get, producer agreements, collaboration agreements, whatever it is, to formalize that split sheet. But at least if you have the split sheet, you have something to work off of and you have some, consensus on, okay, these are the percentages that people are supposed to get. Because people remember things very weirdly. That's one of the things I've learned as a lawyer is people's memories are very different. And a lot of people will be like, oh, yeah, I got 50% of that song. And then, you talk to the other person, they're like, oh, no, I'm only giving them 10%. Okay, well, that's a big difference, 50 and 10. So if you had a split sheet that ironed out what those percentages are supposed to be, that's going to clean up a lot of arguments, right there.
Man, in my reading, I've read tons and tons of case law in these legal books that where you see say a song that I don't want to go specific, but we'll say like this some major song that it's like a household song in the hip hop world or the pop world that everybody knows, but there's always this one guy that was in there, super talented songwriter or whatever, and he was just kind of humming the song with everybody in the studio, and so essentially he was the songwriter, and then that song became this big huge hit, and then he tries to collect his money later and they're like, you didn't put that in writing,
right?
Like that wasn't, you didn't even pay for the studio time, right? So it's like
I recently worked on a song. It was one of the more popular hip hop songs of last year. Like I'm talking 250 million, 300 million streams, so like you would probably know the song if I said it. I can't say what the song is though, but the song's been out over a year now and we still don't have a producer agreement. You know why? Because there's like 5 or 6 people claiming that they produced this or they produced that or they added this or they added that. So nobody can agree on any percentages, and there's basically just like this big pot of money sitting there waiting for everyone to agree so that some people can get it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's just been a nightmare trying to get that all settled. And if they had settled it before the song dropped or before the song got popular, everybody would have been agreeable. People would have been like, oh yeah, you're gonna give me 10%, that sounds great, whatever. Yeah. And then, no one knew the song was gonna blow up and be one of the biggest songs of the year. And it did. So that's the kind of thing where you can definitely prevent that by just getting things in writing as early as you can.
Well, man, absolutely. And it's much more complicated than ever, I think, now, because especially in the hip hop world or EDM, I'm sure too, where you have like 5, even 7 guys that worked on one beat together. The song starts, you hear like half a dozen beat tags right away. Right, it's like, man, how does that split work?
No, I see that all the time, like tracks with like 5 or 6 producers, or, a couple features, a couple different, a ghost writer or something like that. Next thing you got 10 people that are splitting the song, and if everybody doesn't have their documentation correct, like that's, they're not all going to get paid and credited for it,
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I know that one you can't speak on, but are there any stories you could tell of like major industry that maybe is public case law that you could share of an example of?
That's a good question. I don't know if I can get into too many specifics. Just there's a lot, attorney-client privilege type stuff. Nothing that I've really worked on. Obviously there's like big industry examples of stuff like this, but yeah, on my side.
No, I don't mean you. I mean like an example,
Just
like
in general?
like I remember reading about the one hit that Roy Jones had
Okay.
with somebody. I mean, this is one example that I read about. It was like Public Case Law.
Yeah.
It was like Roy Jones and somebody else, and they came out with this label, but it was actually I think Webby that initially that was like his song, you know, and it was essentially because they didn't have their paperwork right. I mean, any stories like that?
Yeah. Oh man, I don't know. I'd have to think about that one.
Yeah, no, it's all good,
yeah,
bro.
Yeah, but there's, it happens. I mean, it definitely happens. You know?
So one thing I want to ask you about, I don't know whether this is your expertise or not. I mean, I'm sure you got the ASCAP hat on it.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
tell us about like publishing and the significance of that and what artists can do to set up their proper publishing.
Yeah. So I mean, shout out to ASCAP. I almost got kicked out of the ASCAP party by grabbing this hat, by the way. I'll tell you that story real quick.
Yeah, please.
This was at South by Southwest, and a buddy told me like, oh yeah, there's an ASCAP like, happy hour like around the corner or whatever. I wasn't on the list or anything, but I was like, yeah, I'll pop in. Yeah. So, I popped in. There was no bouncer, nobody like checking names at the door. So I just walked right in and I saw this table full of these ASCAP hats and I grabbed one of the hats. And then this lady comes up to me. She's like, excuse me, who are you? And I'm like, oh, and I told her who I am. I'm like, I'm a music attorney. I have tons of artists that are part of ASCAP, blah, blah. I named a couple people that I represent. And she was like, oh, okay. Yeah. Take a hat. Yeah. And then they were like, oh yeah, drinks are on us. Like, whatever. Yeah. Like it was all cool. But for a minute they looked at me like, who's this guy taking a hat from the table? You know what I mean? So yeah, I'm proud of this hat.
That's cool though. Yeah, that's dope. So that's exclusive. You can't buy that.
No, this is an ASCAP, original, I guess, But yeah, so publishing, often overlooked part of the industry. It's amazing the artists that I meet, who are large, big artists that aren't registering their songs for publishing, that aren't even registered with BMI or ASCAP or CSAC or whatever, and that's the first thing you can do if you're an artist. If you're not registered with BMI, ASCAP, CSAC. They're all performing rights organizations or PROs. So if you're not registered with a performing rights organization, you're already missing money, So if you're like on DistroKid or Symphonic or United Masters or whatever, and you're releasing, songs, through Spotify and Apple and everything, and you're getting money from that, that's literally only one part of the bucket that you're getting. So there's other avenues there are other royalty channels basically that you could be collecting from, and the easiest one to collect from is your performance royalties. So that's BMI, ASCAP, and all you need to do is register with them, and register your songs, like just put in the song name, put in the splits that everybody has, and you'll start getting checks every quarter.
And just to be clear, because for the layman, like that doesn't mean performance like you performed it live at a show.
It can,
but that's only one.
But that's part of it.
Exactly.
Yeah, but you still get paid every time that song gets streamed. It's like basically like the fraction of a penny that you get from every Spotify stream, so it's already a very small amount that gets split into different buckets and then is then collected by various organizations. So to get all the money that you need to be registered with all these organizations.
Yes.
So, your DistroKid, your Symphonic, whoever is going to collect one part of it. You also have your ASCAP BMI collecting your PRO income. You also have the Mechanical Licensing Collective, which is collecting your mechanicals. You have Sound Exchange, which is collecting your digital performance royalties. Like, there's all these different places that you have to collect publishing from, register with and collect your posting. And this is the reason why a lot of artists will sign what's called a publishing administration deal. So they'll go to, some of the bigger companies are Song Trust or Centric. There are these companies out there that you just register with them, and then they'll go and register everything with all the other companies. So you can go to like one place. Obviously they take like 15, 20, 30%, whatever it is off the top, but makes it a little bit easier, so that you're not having to like manually do all this stuff.
Exactly.
So that's why somebody would sign like a pub admin deal. I always say though, if you're unless you have a massive catalog, like unless you have hundreds of songs out there or a very high performing catalog, you know, it makes sense to just register it on your own. Like it takes a little bit of time, you know, takes some work, but you can do it, you know. And I always tell people if they're, you know, if they're sitting there and they're like, oh man, all that information he just said is like blowing my mind. Like I don't even know where to start. Like book a consultation with me, you know, let's spend, you know, 45 minutes, an hour going through some registrations, you know, because you could pay me and I'll register them for you if you want, but I'd rather teach people how to do it so that they can do it on their own going forward.
Yeah,
you know?
man,
So
that's great.
Like, you know, because it's not something you need a lawyer for, but I understand the confusion, I understand the hesitation. So it's like, come to me, let's sit down, I'll walk you through the process, and then you can leave that session knowing like, all right, I can do this on my own, you know.
And that reminds me, one hat that you wear that I didn't introduce you as, so my apologies, but you are a self-proclaimed advocate for artists.
Yeah, 100%. You know, I obviously I represent labels, you know, some independent and smaller labels, you know, so I'm not strictly on the artist side, but I am, you know, I'm on the artist side. You know what I'm saying? Like I do this because I believe in the creators, you know, and I want people that create art to continue to create it, because without art, like, what are we doing, you know?
Absolutely. So, now I want to segue. Forgive me if you got more stuff.
No, go. Yeah.
I want to segue from publishing into sync licensing, because they technically go hand in hand, right?
They do.
If you're not published and registered, then what good is sync licensing, right?
Yeah, so you know, sync you get paid two ways. So you get paid on the front end and you get paid on the back end. The front end, you know, they'll give you a flat fee, you know, whatever it is, $1,500, you know, upwards of $100,000, like depending on the sync, right? And they'll pay you to use your work, but then every time that, you know, say you're in a TV show or commercial, every time that airs, every time that runs, every time people watch it on Netflix or whatever, you know, you're going to get royalties on the back end because your work is in that work, you know? So if you don't have your publishing registered, you're only going to get that upfront fee, and then that's it. You're not going to participate in all the back end royalties. And, you know, I know people that, you know, their whole careers have been built off of one or two syncs. You know, big shout out to one of my favorite bands. There's a group called Chaos, and they, you remember the show Rick and Morty? I don't know if it's still on the Rick and Morty.
I do.
But they, I think it was the end of the first or the second season of Rick and Morty, one of the seasons, and they play this Chaos song at the very end of the song, and they played like the whole song, you know, which is rare for sync, because it plays during the end when Rick and Morty are doing whatever, and then it continues to play throughout the credits. So it's literally the whole song gets played, and they got, you know, not only a great check for that initially, but like, you know, that's a very popular show that's been airing for a long time. You know, it's in syndication and everything, and you know, they're getting checks because of that sync, you know, forever. Yeah,
that's amazing.
It's amazing.
Yeah,
it's amazing, and it's a cool scene. Like if you're watching this and you look it up, it's a very cool scene, and a weirdly like somber moment for Rick and Morty. You know, like it's like very like it's a cool song.
I gotta check that out though. I definitely gotta check that out.
Shout out to Chaos. I can't remember the name of the song right now, but that's the band.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
So okay, now. Is sync? So I'm sure that's something that you help people with.
Yeah, 100%.
Setting up their sync licensing. But do you also help people like potentially pitch program directors and that sort of thing?
Yeah, I do. I do, and I also like, you know, I mentioned my Discord a little earlier, but I do have a Discord server, the Randy Ojeda Law Discord. It's invite only, so if you're interested in it, DM me, I'll send you an invite if you know, if you're worthy. but you know, on the Discord we have a sync channel, and I will post, like, I get briefs all the time from supervisors and sync agents who are like, hey, we need, you know, just recently we had somebody that needed a hype song for a sports team. You know, again, I can't say the exact team, but they needed a hype song for this team. And, you know, I put that in my Discord, and, you know, we got, you know, maybe 10 submissions from artists who, you You know, some of them even wrote specifically to the brief, which is always cool. You know, like they wrote a song, exactly the hype song for this team, you know, and incorporated the team name and all this stuff, you know.
Yeah.
And yeah, I post those opportunities on the Discord all the time, and I it's open to anybody to submit. And you know, if we can land a sync through that, you know, obviously, like, you know, we'll work out our share or our cut or whatever. But you know, it's opportunity, and it's you know, things happening. So I definitely like to share those opportunities. And whenever any music supervisor reaches out to me with, hey, this is what we need, if I know somebody that I'm like, oh man, I know this guy. You know, oh, you need a boom bap, you know, 90s style hip hop song. I know exactly the guy. And then I, you know, reach out to them.
That's dope, man. Big respect for. So not only are you helping people register, set things up, and guiding them through the legal turmoil, but you're actually providing opportunities and plugging people.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You know, and that's where I feel like, you know, lawyers can be more valuable than they are in an artist's career, because, you know, the black letter law, like the, you know, this equals this, you know, whatever, like the straightforward contracts, that's honestly pretty easy for a lawyer, at least, you know, like most, you know, and most music attorneys can figure that part out, you know, easily. But as people always say, the music industry is a relationship business. And, you know, I've spent, you know, a decade plus building relationships with people in this industry. You know, why wouldn't I utilize those relationships to get more opportunities for people, you know? And it's obviously, it's got to be genuine. It's got to be real, you know, like I'm not just going to pitch people because, you know, they paid me or whatever. Like I'm, you know, my reputation's on the line too. So, you know, I'm only pitching the stuff that makes sense, that, you know, the connections that work. But, you know, I always feel like, if I'm making connections, if I'm making things happen for people, it's just going to lead to more work for me down the line. You know? So even if I don't get a direct benefit from connecting point A to point B, somewhere down the line, it's going to work out.
You're paying it forward, brother. That's what it's all about. Exactly. Absolutely.
Exactly.
So, okay, I am embarrassed to admit that I've dabbled in Discords.
Okay.
But because, well, I tried to kind of crack the whole Twitter or X code, so to speak, because I had a friend that got me super interested in NFTs, right? And not so much like the digital art. He had me interested in NFTs for music and for crowdsourcing and essentially owning everything, right? And cutting out the middleman. And I see there's a niche for that. Like, I don't know if you're familiar with the artist Dill.
Yeah.
Right. So, and I tapped into that a little bit, but man, I want to tell you where the trouble was for me was it's like on, for example, my perspective, and this may not be the correct perspective, but my perspective, like I do really well on Facebook. I do really well on IG. I do really well on the meta platforms. I do all right on TikTok. This is not my platform.
Yeah, I'm the same.
But where I tried and I didn't do well was in the Discords, in the communities, because like for me, posting once a day and tapping in once a day on Meta was a lot for me. But with the Discords, it's like it's minute to minute.
Oh no, it's constant.
Right? Yeah. So like that's why I kind of ease out. I even stopped. I was sharing every podcast reel on there, and I kind of stopped because it just wasn't growing. I didn't have the blue check mark, you know. So in order to really be to be active and to tap into your Discord, do you need to be pretty active on the X platform or the Twitter platform?
Yeah, I mean, you know, with Discord, you know, I try to check in a couple times a day with what people are talking about. But what's cool is like once you build up enough of a community, like people start kind of running with things on their own. So like, you know, even questions for me where people are like, hey, you know, what do I do about this or whatever? And they're like, oh, Randy, you know, somebody else will respond and say, oh, Randy actually answered that a couple weeks ago. Here's their answer, you know, and people will answer questions, you know, for each other and help, you know, be a resource together. So it's a community thing is what it is, you know?
Yeah. And I love that dynamic of it.
But it's hard. I mean, it took us a while to build that community. I think now we're at like about 200 members, which is great, you know, but, you know, it's just, yeah, it just takes time, you know. And even I wish I was more active on the Discord than I am, you know. But who's got the time? You know?
Well, and when you're an attorney, I imagine but good for you for doing that and plugging people and creating a bridge essentially for people.
Totally.
I do want to pick your brain a little bit. I'm not trying to open up a whole can of worms here. I'm just curious, as someone that's involved in the Discord, super active on Twitter, and very much in the know in the industry. What is your take on the blockchain in music, and do you think that there is a future to that? If not, is that the place to be now, and people just aren't hip to it yet?
You know, I feel like maybe even just like a year ago, it was a really hot thing, you know, and like music, NFTs and things like that were like really bubbling, but I feel like that's kind of died down a little bit recently, and maybe that's just NFTs and the blockchain in general, or specific to music. What I see growing, and where I would, you know, put my stock in if I was an artist and I was trying to figure out where to spend my time, is, you know, the big buzzword in the industry, and you'll hear this at South by Southwest and Music Biz and all these conferences. Everybody's talking about D2C. You know, I
don't even know.
Direct to consumer.
Okay, bad. Yes.
It's a very simple concept, but it's where the industry is going right now. Like places like Even and Bandcamp and Hitmaker and these websites and portals where you can sell directly to the fans and you can own that fan relationship. That's the biggest deal. So, you know, Spotify is fine, you know, for growing an audience. It's, you know, it is what it is, but you're not getting direct access to your fans. Like even with Spotify for artists, you'll know the cities that they're from, the countries that they're from, whatever, but you're not going to know who they are, you know? Yeah. And with Bandcamp or Even or these platforms, like you're getting their email, their name, their location, everything, you know, so that you can service those fans and build real connections with that audience. Yeah. As opposed to with Spotify, where a lot of, you know, even a lot of the people that do well on Spotify, it's passive listeners, you know, like you're not engaging with the audience. You're just, you know, you're on a playlist with 1,000 other artists and people don't even know what your artist name is, you know, but they know they like the song, which is great. You know, there's nothing wrong with that. But, you know, that's why a lot of big Spotify artists can't tour, you know, very much, because they don't have that actual audience. They just have the Spotify audience. Yeah. You know?
And who knows how much of that is, you know, bought it or
whatever, you know, or just like I said, just passive. Yeah, you know, exactly. It's not like, but if somebody is going to go on Bandcamp or go on Even or go on one of these platforms and even pay $1 for your song, that shows a level of commitment that is greater than a Spotify stream.
Well, and that's where you really see come to life. Like Angel, shout out Angel Soto. He always has the it's a tested theory. It's not a theory. It's a proven thing that 1,000 fans. If you have 1,000 fans and they're spending $1 a week on you,
right?
You know what I mean? Like that's $1,000 a week. I'll take there.
That. Yeah. You know, no sweat. You know, I think that's where the industry is moving towards. And, you know, unfortunately, the major labels and the big companies are probably going to find a way to get their teeth into that and monetize it and make money for themselves. But right now, it's kind of the Wild West with direct to consumer, and it's a little more open where you can make that noise and make something happen that way.
You know, I think a beautiful example of direct to consumer, like one artist that comes to mind, I know there's a lot of artists, but like the most well-known artist that in a way pioneered that, Nipsey Hussle.
I was assuming you were going to say Nipsey Hussle, but yes, that's a great example. Russ is another one.
Oh, bro, I love Russ. Yeah.
You know,
not even so much as an artist, just as a human being, and the way that everything he learns, he shares. Yeah. Which is pretty amazing.
It is amazing. But yeah, those are, you know, both examples of artists that built their own communities that sold to people directly, you know, and were, you know, Nipsey Hussle especially was constantly putting out content, constantly like feeding the streets, if you will, you know.
Yeah.
And that's, you know, I feel like if I was making a game plan as an artist, that's what I would be focusing on and doing right now.
So I gotta pedal back real quick because I think I misunderstood you. You were talking about Russ.
Yeah.
Okay, big shout out to Russ. He's an incredible artist. But you know who I was referring to actually, and I thought you were referring to completely different artist, La Russell.
Oh yeah, no, La Russell too.
Yeah.
Yeah, another one. Yeah. Both of them are doing it real well.
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
Yeah, they're great examples of that. Another one, I don't know if you know BFB the Pac-Man.
I don't.
BFB Pac-Man, he's another one. He's like, you know, he's like a pretty major artist now, but he's like with TuneCore. Like he's got like a, you know, very independent deal, you know. Even, you know, I know he's a little controversial. He's kind of fallen off a little bit, but even like Chance the Rapper, you know, is like a great example of like somebody that came up and, you know, built a community. You know, I remember Chance. Chance came up when I was living in Chicago, so I got to know like his former manager Pat and like some people on the team and stuff like that when I was first getting into the industry. And one of the cool things I thought Chance did was he did a free show in Chicago, in downtown Chicago, and it was free only for high school students. You had to have a high school ID card to get into the show, and completely free for them. Yeah. And I'm like, man, like that's such a cool idea. And he sold it out. He packed the house, and you know, just for these kids that, you know, normally wouldn't get access to a show like that.
Well, and that's such a breath of fresh air in an industry that really thrives on alcohol sales.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying?
No, it's true.
And I'm not trying to get on like my moral soapbox here because like, but really and truly, I mean, I can remember trying to do shows as a teenager and them saying like, "What's your demographic?" Oh no, they don't buy alcohol.
Right,
you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
it's. Yeah, and we need more spaces like that, especially like, you know, I don't want to get too much on my soapbox, but especially in Tampa, you know, with a venue like Crowbar closing in the next couple months, you know, it's like we need spaces for younger people to congregate and for people in general to see live music, you know, like we just need more places like that.
Well, you know, I'm not so in the loop here in Tampa, but I you know, keep my ear to the ground, so to speak, in St. Pete, and like it's such a tragedy. Places like the local 662, Food Bar, places that like where local music was really thriving and creating opportunities for local artists, you know. And then the State Theater closing and becoming like, I mean, I guess they do. I don't know much about the Floridian Social Club, but
they don't do as many shows anymore.
It's more of a bigger productions, and I don't know so much about like locals. To be real, like I'm not knocking them. I'm just saying, like, I actually know the owner, the dude, who's on Orange Street. Remember, I used to coach him. Okay. But aside from all that, the point I want to make is they have this huge, thriving, and growing community in St. Pete, in what I always knew as the Deuces. Now they consider it the warehouse district, right? And there's all these,
that's
right?
old school St. Pete, right?
Exactly. And I'm wondering, is there an equivalent in Tampa that could potentially pop up to replace, you know, those, because you know, areas like Ybor, I'd say is essentially like what's happening in downtown St. Pete. Rent prices are going crazy, driving people out. Live Nation, I don't even know if we need to open that can of worms right here. Yeah, I get that. But I actually interviewed a dude, bro, that's suing them. We won't get into all that, but huge lawsuit.
Wow.
Huge lawsuit. Tommy D, shout out Tommy D versus Live Nation.
Oh yeah.
Tommy D, that I interviewed him on the show, bro.
So Tom, I mean, he runs the Crowbar, you know. So
No, not him. No, not Tom. But shout out to him too. Like, I understand he's going through his struggles. I heard he's about to open up start up a podcast and cook it.
He did. It's like he's like on the water talking to people.
Good for him, man. That's dope.
Yeah.
That's dope. But I'm talking about a guy out of the Northeast who was essentially blackballed allegedly by Live Nation, and he's been in a legal battle with them for over 15 years now.
Wow.
Yeah, and I see that they're finally getting some traction with that, and like people giving just crazy testimony. But again, I don't want to open up a can of worms. But that's, I understand that's what's happening in Ybor. Is like these Live Nation owned. They're coming in buying up venues, small venues. Like they're making sure nobody eats if you don't go through them. You know, and so I think it's so critical that that we as a community of Tampa Bay, whether you're on one side of the bridge or the other, to support these little guys that are opening up areas and say an area maybe similar to the warehouse district, right? And building these communities, right, in areas that aren't so saturated or well known yet.
Right.
And potentially it's like, okay, well, y'all shut us down here. We can build something over here.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. No, and shout out to like the Orpheum and New World Brewery and, these places that opened up in another part of town because, they got run out of Ybor, which is the sad part. Ybor used to be the spot for shows. Like I remember going to 2 or 3 shows in one night in Ybor because there's so many venues. And now it's like, there's not much going on that like there should be.
Yeah, man. I mean, exact same thing happened in downtown St. Pete, and I'm hopeful that this warehouse district is going to be the missing link, so to speak, right? Or I should say the new seeds, right? For the new industry, right? But that keeps things local, keeps things grassroots and organic, man.
No, and shout out to like No Clubs and Daddy Cool.
Yeah,
and all them,
I was thinking about them because they got moved off of Central. And then over to the warehouse district. Shout out to Manny.
Yeah, so
right?
Manny's keeping the torch alive. I love Manny.
Bro, so again, I've known that whole No Clubs, Dave and Tony. Bro, like as a child, those are like my uncles.
Yeah.
Bro, you know what I mean? Like, and that was my saving grace from the streets is I had music to pour into, right? And I think that it makes me sad to see that like a kid that was maybe at the age when music was a refuge for me, you know what I mean? Like they don't have that right now.
Yeah.
I mean, even Janice, bro. I used to go to shows. It's all ages event. You know what I mean? And all ages venue and tickets were maybe 20. If it was a big show, maybe 40.
Right.
Bro, I haven't seen a ticket less than like $80, $100, bro. You know what I mean? And it's like,
no, it's tough. It's tough. It really is. For everybody. I mean, touring and live music is, sometimes sometimes it keeps me up at night. I'm not going to lie. Like I worry about, like what's going to happen to the live music industry because not only is our tickets expensive and you got all the Ticketmaster fees and all that BS, but you also, it's just hard to be an artist and tour, it's so expensive to tour and, shout out to, I have a clients, they're a band called Gouge Away. They're from Florida. They're, hardcore, like heavy punk band. And they were playing a show, I think in Seattle or Portland, somewhere in the Pacific Northwest. And the venue was taking like a 30% merch cut of the merch that they were selling, which is unfortunately pretty common amongst larger venues. They take that merch cut and they ran the numbers and they're like, man, we'd actually kind of lose money on every shirt sale if we give them 30%.
Yeah, bro, that's crazy.
So what they did, and they actually made the news about this, like this, it was in, Pitchfork and Stereo Gum and all the music blogs wrote about this, but basically they sold merch out of the van. They're like, come out to the parking lot. We'll sell you merch there, but we're not selling anything inside.
Hell yeah, bro.
And I love that for like the punk rock spirit of that and everything. And, I'm glad the media kind of picked up on it and made it a story because like, I feel like more bands should do stuff like that, like.
Bro, you just brought me back, man, like back to my punk rock days, like in the mid 90s and shit. But like when someone cool, 30% on the merch, man, that's not punk rock, bro.
No, it's not. No, it's not, So yeah, power to them. Yeah, sell it out of the van. I hope they sold a boatload of merch that night,
Yeah, man. Yeah. Hell yeah. So bro, I want to make sure that you tell everybody where they can find you, any services that you provide, anything else that you want to share with this audience while we got you here, man.
Yeah, no, I'm pretty easy to find, honestly. I'm at Real Randy Ojeda on pretty much every social network. Don't follow the fake Randy Ojeda, follow the real Randy Ojeda. That's me. The fake Randy Ojeda is this kid from Venezuela whose account I've been trying to get for like 10 years. He hasn't posted since like 2008. It's like, bro, just give me that account. But, whatever. Real Randy Ojeda. So follow me there. You can follow Randy Ojeda Law. If you want an invite to the Discord, reach out to me and I'll send you an invite. I offer a bunch of services, but the easiest entry point is a 30-minute consultation with me. We can talk about whatever you're whatever you're struggling with, whatever you're working on in the industry, and make a game plan for like, okay, here's how we can move forward, you know. And it's a pretty low commitment, you know, 30 minutes. We can talk about, you know, whatever we need to get you to the next level. So if you want to book that, it's randyojedalaw.com. And yeah, that's me.
Hell yeah, bro. And so Randy, R-A-N-D-Y, Ojeda, O-J-E-D-A.
You got it.
Okay,
Yeah.
just for the people that can't spell.
For people listening. Yeah. O-J-E-D-A. I know that's a tough one. But,
Okay. Yeah, absolutely, brother.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Now, I ask every single guest that comes on this show, because this is the Live Struggle Legacy. And I want to make sure any special insight, any closing remarks that you have with the audience, I want to make sure you get that out. But Randy, what does legacy mean to you?
Oh, man. Oh, that's a good question. You know, for me, it's about, you know, obviously, like, you know, I got a platinum record, I got a gold record, like I got all these awards and accolades. But at the end of the day, legacy for me is like how I'm remembered in the way that I treated people. You know, like if I'm treating people right and people remember me as like, oh, Randy, he really cared, he really like, you know, was honest and sincere. That's the legacy that I want to leave, you know. So I don't know exactly what legacy means, you know, but for me, it's about, you know, people remembering you as a person that was honest and sincere. You know?
Yeah,
that's it.
I love that so much, man. You know, as a father, that's the most important. Wear a lot of hats too, but the most important hat that I wear is as a dad.
Absolutely.
And something that I talk to my 7-year-old son about a lot is, you know, respect.
Yeah.
And what does respect mean? You know, and to me, all respect means, it's like the golden rule. It's treating people the way you want to be treated, right? That's respect, and that's a beautiful, you know, philosophy to build a legacy on, brother.
Yeah, I agree, and you know, it's really easy in this industry to like be a jerk to people. You know, like you can be mean if you want to, but it's at the end of the day, it's a very small industry. You know, it seems like it's not, but it is. Everybody knows everybody, and people remember how you treated them. You know, and I would say, like, you know, obviously I'm a zealous advocate for my clients. I'm going to fight for their rights. I'm going to fight for the best deal that I can possibly get, but I'm not going to disrespect you, you know, like I'm not going to, you know, not going to be a jerk about it. You know, like I'm just doing my job, you know, and doing it right. You know,
That's right. Do you have anything else you want to share with the audience, brother?
No, I think we covered a lot, man. Like I appreciate you having me. You know, I love this podcast, and you know, so if you're listening to this or watching it, like go back and listen to the back catalog. You know, listen to some older episodes. Keep on the lookout for new episodes. Shout out to my boy Caleb, who's going to be on a future episode.
Yeah,
you know?
We're gonna see Caleb real soon.
Yeah,
Beautiful,
right.
yes.
That's great. It's great. He's right next door making some hits right now. So. You know, shout out to him, and shout out to Angel and Benton Media Lounge, Benton Coffee Shop. I'm coming. I might come tomorrow to get a Benton breakfast sandwich, because I've been staring at that on the wall for the last hour, and yeah, it's sounding good. So come on down.
Beautiful, brother. Thank you so much, man. And big. I always, every episode I should be shouting out Benton Media Lounge, Angel Soto, Benton Brew. This is the spot for all things creative, music, coffee, snacks. If you haven't been by,
juices,
fresh juices, all the things, and the best vibe in the whole Tampa Bay.
All right,
Randy Ojeda, thank you so much. So, artist, musician, manager, music industry advocate, and attorney. Thank you so much for coming on the show, brother.
Yeah, thanks, MP. I appreciate you.
You're very welcome, brother. It's been an honor and a blessing. Thank
Likewise.
you. It's Live Struggle Legacy. If you haven't already done so, please make sure you hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, hit that notification bell. Ask Randy some legal questions in the comment section. Start a conversation. If you're listening on a streaming platform, please hit that follow button, download, save, rate us. If you're looking to promote your business, holler at me, because we're looking for sponsors. And please make sure to check out the livestrugglelegacy.com for all things Live Struggle Legacy. We building pyramids. At Autism Acceptance All Stars, it's more than awareness, it's action. When you sign up at the AAAS.org, you join a movement for acceptance, inclusion, and real impact. Don't miss our Memories Delivered program. We bring professional photographers right to the homes of autism families, capturing genuine moments in the comfort of their own space. Becoming an All-Star is free, but the difference you make is priceless. Visit the AAAS.org today. Be seen, be heard, be an all-star. If you'd like to promote your business on the show, please DM us for sponsorship opportunities. Thanks for tuning in. We out. Live Struggle Legacy. It's a whole movement.